My name is Antoinette Jackson. I'm a project leader in BCIT's Applied Research Liaison Office. Hi, everybody. And I'm just going to be doing the introduction and sort of hosting the event today. So the first thing that I would like to do is acknowledge that we are, the BCIT campuses are located on the traditional and unceded territories of several Indigenous peoples. We honor and respect the diverse histories, cultures, and contributions of these communities. Specifically, we recognize that BCIT's main campus is situated on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We also acknowledge the territories of the Kwikletlam, Kootsy, and Stalo nations on our other campuses. We're committed to fostering a meaningful relationship with Indigenous communities and incorporating their perspectives into our educational practices. We express our gratitude for their enduring presence and stewardship of the land. So welcome to today's webinar. It's being presented by the Smart Microgrid Applied Research team at BCIT's at the British Columbia Institute of Technology's Center for Applied Research and Innovation. SMART is a dedicated applied research group within BCIT's Center for Applied Research and Innovation, and they are committed to advancing smart grid technologies both nationally and internationally. SMART works to drive innovation and develop cutting-edge solutions to meet the evolving needs of the electricity grid. They focus on creating cost-effective technologies, bridging the gap between research and practical application to ensure that their innovations are not only groundbreaking, but also feasible and scalable. Collaboration is a core principle of their work. SMART partners with utility companies, tech providers, and researchers to co-develop solutions, smart grid solutions. I'm just going to let Yvette Jones in. Okay. Let's see now. By fostering these partnerships and leveraging collective expertise, SMART accelerates the development and deployment of transformative technologies. The group's research spans quite a few areas, or several areas, including smart microgrids, energy management systems, EV charging infrastructure, cybersecurity, cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. SMART is also dedicated to education and knowledge dissemination. And through publications, webinars, courses, and training programs, they share their findings and insights with students and the broader community. The group also provides some consulting, solution design, and testing services to support their partners in implementing smart grid solutions. Today's webinar is part of SMART's project, Empowering Diverse Communities Through Skills Development with Virtual Experiential Learning. The project is funded by Future Skills Centre, and it's designed to support a wide range of Canadian audiences in developing skills for a net zero economy. The goal is to reach industry professionals, newcomers, and especially those in rural and remote communities. So a little bit about the funder of this project, Future Skills Centre. They are dedicated to helping Canadians gain the skills needed to thrive in a rapidly evolving labor market. As a pan-Canadian initiative, it bridges ideas and innovations across the country to create a robust evidence base for decision makers. FSC's mission is to provide all Canadian workers with effective skills development and training, emphasizing inclusivity and supporting underserved groups, including Indigenous peoples and those in rural, remote, and northern communities. Through the past collaborations with Future Skills and other funding agencies, SMART has developed the Virtualized Experiential Learning platform. This integrates various systems and tools to deliver virtual hands-on training. So far, SMART has created 2 training programs specifically designed to help utility workers, professionals, and community members in Indigenous and rural and remote areas acquire essential skills. As part of the project, SMART has partnered with Dr. Michael Ross of Yukon University to leverage his extensive experience in these communities in order to evaluate the course and ensure it meets the unique needs of these communities. So a little bit about Dr. Ross, and I will move my slide forward. There we go. So Dr. Michael Ross is the Industrial Chair in Northern Energy Innovation and an Assistant Professor at Yukon University. He focuses on meeting the energy needs of Northern communities and Indigenous governments by integrating renewable energy sources, developing smart grids, and advancing microgrid technologies. He has collaborated with several Northern Indigenous communities on renewable energy projects to ensure reliable and sustainable power systems. So I'm just going to be bringing Dr. Ross on in a second. Just a couple of things to note. This presentation is being recorded. It's going to be available on YouTube. Please check out the BCIT Innovation YouTube channel at BCIT Innovation. In a week or two, this presentation will be up. Alternatively, you could connect with me, Antoinette_Jackson at bcit.ca. We'll put that in the chat. There'll be a Q&A session after the presentation. Please post your questions in the chat, and we'll read those to Dr. Ross, and he can answer those. So I'm going to switch over the presentation to Dr. Ross's, and please welcome him.
Short like this.
Just for us.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to start by kind of what I intend to do with this presentation, because I've been very coy about talking about my experiences working with Indigenous communities, because I don't know if it's obvious, and I'm glad everyone's sitting down, but I'm not Indigenous. I know it's a shocker, but I've been fortunate to work with communities over the past 8.5 years. And I'm originally from Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, lived in Montreal, lived in Vancouver when working at BCIT before moving up north. I didn't really have that exposure. And to say I know everything would be very, very false, because I don't. But I feel like over the past 8 years, I've gained some experience and learned about best practices on working with Northern remote and Indigenous communities that many times, and this isn't just with BCIT, I'm very fortunate for the opportunity to be speaking here with BCIT. So what I say here isn't necessarily reflective of BCIT. I'm fortunate they're providing a platform for this, but time and time again, I'm being presented with opportunities for partnerships with higher education institutions who legitimately want to do good. Heads in the right place, hearts in the right place. But the way in which projects are being proposed, the way in which engagement is being done, I often find myself like, no, that doesn't quite work. No, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting my name on this. No, I don't think this is appropriate. That rather than me not share my experiences, and good people who want to do meaningful work don't have the opportunity to do so, what I want to do is I want to share my experiences, my approaches, not to say that it's the best practices even. I'm still learning. If I were to do this presentation 5 years ago, it would look very different than what I'm presenting today, and will look very different than what I will present 5 years from now. And I do not represent, nor do I speak on behalf of Indigenous communities. So I want to make sure that what I'm trying to present here is my admittedly naive experiences coming from another higher education institution, of what I have found works for me and my approach, as a means to facilitate and encourage other higher education institutions to operate in a way that works for your communities. So that way more opportunities can exist for the benefit of communities through partnerships. So I want to create that caveat right from the start of what this is and what this isn't. Like I said before, I am not speaking on behalf of anybody. this, and if I say anything in this presentation that is offensive, that is definitely not my intention. And I'd be happy to correct that. But rather than hindering projects that want to do meaningful work that could benefit communities, what I want to do is just share some of the work that I've been doing and the approach and that mindset. So with regards to my experience with working with northern and remote Indigenous communities, I've partnered with 10 different Indigenous communities across the 3 territories on their renewable energy project. And I'm very fortunate to have played a role. I work with communities in the Yukon in Old Crow, Beaver Creek, Burwash Landing, Watson Lake, in Northwest Territories in Letzelkay, Aklavik, and Paulatuk, and in Nunavut, in Kingate, Apiat, and Sanikiluaq. I'm currently working with the hamlet of Paulatuk and Nunavut Saudi Corporation for Sanikiluaq. So that's why they're in yellow. But what I'm bringing here is just kind of what I've learned when working with Northern and Indigenous communities. And I could say, yeah, I've worked with 10 different communities, but I don't want to say it like that because they're not feathers in the cap. Because once you've seen one Indigenous community, you've seen one Indigenous community. They're all very different with unique histories, values, traditions, cultures that I learn something new with every community that I work with. I don't know what I will learn with the new community that I work with. I just know that I don't know everything. And one of the approaches that I like to take is recognizing I don't know what I don't know. They say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's good to use it in that proportion. In terms of listening, understanding, and making sure that you have an open mind around things. And the moment that I think I know how to do this is the moment that I've forgotten how to do this. So when I say this is the experience that I bring in, and I say, I don't know everything. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt through my experiences. When working with communities, one of the first things that I like to ask is, what does success look like? Because they're all very different. And like I said, these are 10 high penetration renewable energy projects throughout the territories. Either typically wind, battery, microcontrol, solar, battery, microcontrol, sometimes other initiatives like demand side management, other aspects. But not a single one of these projects are about renewables. I'm biased. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm trained in STEM fields, but none of these renewable energy projects are about renewables. I'll give you an example. I'll give you 3 examples. When working on the Shrevea project, the Old Crow Solar project, I was fortunate to meet with Chief Tija Tram, and I asked him, what does a successful project look like to you? He described a vision for his community, his fly-in community that is dependent on diesel being trucked up the Dempster Highway and then flown into his community, where he has more energy sovereignty, where traditionally was self-sustaining off the land and on the porcupine caribou. If they could meet their energy needs locally themselves through local natural renewable resources, while also supporting the traditional way of life and also fostering a local economy where it provides more empowerment within the community, more energy sovereignty, and more autonomy in how their energy needs are met, that is what success looks like. So part of it is energy sovereignty. Part of it is creating jobs within the community through the local revenue from the project, and also to reduce reliance on imported sources of carbon emitting fuels. But it's not just that. He wanted to make sure that there was also support for the traditional way of life. And that informs what a successful project is for them. So for example, does operating diesel off, is that a metric of success for the community? Absolutely. If in part-times in the summer, if all the energy needs from the community are met by the community in a renewable manner, that is a part of the vision of success. When bridging the traditional way of life and the renewables, the best location for the solar plant was actually in amongst a berry field, close to the community. But they didn't want to destroy the berry field because they didn't want to have elders need to go far for gathering berries. So that was a critical component for success. But that informs the success of the project, because then you couldn't have a system that's above 1 kilovolt, because then you would require by regulation to have a fence around it, and then those berry patches would be not accessible to others within the community. So it's not just about the renewables. Renewables are a way to get there. But in order to make sure that it is successful, we have to understand that vision of why it's there. Second example, working with Kluane First Nation, again in the Yukon, on their Sea Wind project. The Kluane First Nation, well, the traditional territory, there are two communities, Burwash Landing and Destruction Bay, that are about 15 kilometers apart. There's one diesel generator servicing both communities, so we treat it as one system, and that's why I'm referring to it as the Kluane Wind project. Most of the Kluane First Nation live in Burwash Landing. And there are a lot of other people, not necessarily for Kluane First Nation citizens, that predominantly live in Destruction Bay. But the school is in Destruction Bay. So the children have to take a bus into Destruction Bay every morning and then leave every night. And it's far away, but it's also an elementary school. So when students reach a certain age of high school, they have to go to Whitehorse to go to high school. And where the kids go, the parents tend to go as well. And when the community leaves Whitehorse for high school, so when they leave for Whitehorse for a few years, they don't always come back into the community. So when asking Chief Dixon, what does a successful project look like to you? He said, I want to build a renewable energy project so that we could advance the technological needs of the community, integrating clean energy, but also so that revenue could help build a high school in Burwash Landing to keep our community together. And so you notice, even in those two examples, is revenue a part of it? Absolutely. More than just that, of what a successful project looks like. And that also informs what does a successful project, like looks at the nuances of the implementation. The third example, in Palatine, in Northwest Territories. They're pursuing a Citibit wind energy project, a high penetration wind energy project. When asking the mayor, Ray Rubin, what does a successful project look like to you? He said, I want to build wealth for my community. But let me explain what I mean by wealth. Because is wealth financial? Yes, absolutely it is. But it's more than that. Because the hamlet of Palatine is close to a nickel reserve and a rare earth mineral reserve, 4 times richer than Sudbury. But if it was just financial, inviting mining corporations into Palatine and dig up the traditional territory for short-term gains, and even 30 years, 100 years is still short-term in the grand scheme of things, that is not building wealth for the community. That is going to be changing the geese migration, the caribou migration. They'll destroy their traditional territory. That is not wealth. They see renewables as a means of making sure that they do so in a sustainable manner. It can bring financial wealth to the community, but also sustainable wealth that also supports the community into pursuing their traditional way of life that they see a value. Also, they are global citizens. It's a very small population, 320 people in the community, but they feel like they are global citizens. Like, climate change is affecting the North at 3 to 4 times the rate as it is down south. And even though what can 320 people do might be just a drop in the bucket, but there isn't a raindrop that feels that they're responsible for the flood. So they feel socially, as a global citizen, they want to do their part and they want to get to net zero. So when you think about, these are just 3 examples. So when you think about, oh, renewable energy is all about renewable energy, we just need to maximize the penetration and that is what a good project is. No, not necessarily. Okay, we need to maximize revenue because that's what the community wants. Well, no, not necessarily. It's deeper than that. And I don't know if anyone has read the book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, but that's kind of the framework of the why, how, what, in terms of, in order to define what a successful project looks like, you truly have to understand why they want to do it. What does success look like for the community? Could it be energy sovereignty? Could it be economic opportunities? Could it be reduction in greenhouse gas emissions through climate change? There are many different ways. And the thing is that every community has their own vision, has their own values. And if there's, there are many excellent things, but if there's one key strength that a lot of Indigenous communities have, is they are rooted in tradition, culture, and values. And unless you could identify that, your project might completely miss the mark. If there was a renewable energy project that was installed by Northwest Territories Power Corporation in Palatine, does the exact same thing, produces wind. If it does, even though it might meet some energy sovereignty needs of serving locally, but if it doesn't build wealth for the community, that might be seen as not a successful project. And you don't understand these nuances until you meet with the community and truly understand what they're saying and why they're saying. So in a lot of ways, find out why they want, why this is, do what a successful project looks like. The how oftentimes is the renewables. We want to do it through renewables. There are opportunities. We see how the value streams that renewables can provide align with the values of the community. And then the what is a specific project. In addition to that, you could go backwards. If you have a what, we have a renewable energy project, you could identify additional value streams by how. As an example, you could build a solar project in the community, but if there are opportunities to hire local youth to implement training programs in a way that the community sees a value, you could grow the value proposition of the partnership by how you do the work as well. That also feeds into the why. And it's an interesting perspective where in a lot of Western cultures, the people who are most influential in our society is the working class. The 18 to 65, we have more contribution, we have more say on different things. It's very different in many Indigenous communities, and I apologize if I'm generalizing, that's not my intent. But the power of the knowledge of elders and the strength of youth in the community is very important with many communities that I've worked with. That understanding that the social structure within the communities could help identify to whom you're also providing value. Does anybody have a favorite superhero that they grew up with? Yeah, mine was Spider-Man growing up. I liked Spider-Man. He was just nerdy enough for me. So we grew up watching all these superheroes and identifying one day it'd be pretty cool to be one of them. I think that that's the wrong approach. We've all been trained with this as these are the heroes. This is who we want to be. But it's not about us. Similar to, we also all grew up with for a cup of coffee, you could help a child in Africa. That's also the wrong approach because this is framed as it being about you, but it's not. It's not about you. It's about the community and ensuring that they are top priority. So if you look at your contribution to a project, you are there to serve. Despite having worked with many communities in the North, I haven't worked with all of them. Sometimes the work that I can do doesn't align with their initiatives, their priorities, and no hard feelings, but I'm not going to fit a square peg into a round hole. But if I come into the mentality of I am here to serve, I take no offense if the work that I'm doing doesn't line up. It is my job and my responsibility to ensure that the work that I do is of value to the community, and it's structured as such. And as a higher education institution, just food for thought. How would you treat your work differently if the community was your funder? So I am accountable to my funders. They have specific metrics that I have to abide by. That's part of the obligation through our agreement. Oftentimes, or sometimes if the community isn't the funder, it's like, I would love to do that. Everybody, I have no doubt everybody on this Zoom call, everyone in this room wants to do good, meaningful work. But when it comes time to sacrifice, it's very difficult to do. And sometimes it's the inherent structure within the organization to say, no, you have to do X when the community wants you to do Y. But if you are there to serve, how would your project differ if the community was your only funder? How would you approach the work if the community were to be the ones to give you the yes or no on your professional development and advancement in your career? Oftentimes, communities may or may not be your funder. But if you want to do meaningful work and truly serve the community, that's a good approach that I would think to go by in terms of, to be honest, like, I owe my career to the communities. I would not be standing here talking to you. I would not have the work that I'm doing if communities didn't work, if I didn't work well with communities. And I truly would not do anything to compromise that, recognizing that it's a very, very important part of my work that gives meaning and purpose. And sometimes that comes with challenges. So for example, when working with the Kewaunee and Sea Wind Project, it was during COVID. My travel budget when visiting on 3 separate occasions, the day we were supposed to travel, it was canceled. Sometimes it was because there's COVID in the community, do not come. Sometimes there was a passing in the community, do not come. That ate up my travel budget. But when it came time to the community's ready to come, that's my problem, not the community's problem. I have to work around what they want because I'm here to serve. And what is my problem, my challenges, does put me in very troublesome situations. If I tell a community that you are my number one priority, I have to be very well prepared to follow through on that. Not yeah, but my budget's out. I need to be creative around that, which is very difficult. And I recognize it's difficult. If it were easy, I wouldn't need to be doing this talk. It'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah, we get it. We are working with communities. It's not easy. And I recognize that and I appreciate that, especially from a higher education institution. We are not, as academics, we're not always set up to succeed in this space. And there are a lot of people who want to do good, meaningful work. So I recognize that it's a challenge, but it's very important to change the mind frame around it. Another thing that I like to do is try to take a relational approach to the projects. So there's the contract agreement of this is what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, and this is the scope of work. And then once the project's done, that's good. But through a relational approach is actually in all of our contribution agreements and all of our transfer agreements, we always have a line on we will adapt to serve what is in the community's best interest as determined by the community. So that I don't think I've ever pursued a project where the scope that we outlined is what is in our final deliverables, because I want to make sure that we adapt to what the community needs at the time, and the community's needs as the project evolves changes. Also, technically our agreement with Wantagwitchin First Nation ended in 2018. We are still supporting the community. So even though we have worked with 10 different communities, and I'm not saying that I have great relations with all of them. It's like friends. Some friends you're closer with than others. And I'm not saying that's like, oh yeah, I'm great at working with that. But with every community that we work with, by having that relational approach, it makes sure that you foster that trusting relationship. But it's also an extra burden where if the financial agreement ends and the community needs something a bit more to help advance it, it's not like, well, sorry, we need another agreement. It's like, yes, you are my priority. It is my responsibility to make sure that I support you in a way that you need it. Another thing about research is researchers, in order to work with communities, are fighting an uphill battle, especially institutions down south. I'll give an example. So Inuit Pirt Kanatami has a strategy on research, and ITK they kind of are a representative organization for Inuit across Inuvialuit, Nunavut, Nunavik, Nunatsiavut. And within that report, they said in 2011, for every 3 Inuit, there's a research paper about Inuit. So everybody in this room, look to the person to your left, look to the person to the right. Out of the 3 of you, there's a research paper about you. And most of them don't even benefit the community. Most of them stays on bookshelves in institutions down south. So there's an inherent bias against, okay, we're being researched. So when understanding is your project work, is it research about the community? Is it research for the community? Or is it research with the community? And who has authority and autonomy to determine what it is? If I do research in electrical engineering, but the community's priority is health, might not be a good fit. If I do research in power engineering, but the community wants to have energy literacy, maybe I could be a good fit, but understanding how it is, maybe we could collaborate. So one of the things that we've done is we've developed a co-created community energy systems course with Wantagwitchin First Nation in Old Grove, and then another one with the hamlet of Polita, to make sure that it's a co-creation as much as we can. I'm not saying that every project will be with the community, but if there are opportunities to be creative on how it could be co-developed, on how it could be guided, how it could be directed by the community, it will have a much stronger impact. One key aspect when working with communities is trust. And change happens at the speed of trust. Trust is productive. My team right now is in Whitehorse working, and I trust that they're going to do work. And I'm out of Whitehorse right now. They trust that I'm doing good work up here. Trust is productive. And without trust, it's hard to advance good initiatives. Now, when I look at trust, I'd like to think of it as, like, in terms of what trust is. If you're going for a surgery, you would get the opinion of your doctor because you trust that they are adept and proficient with their work. They're technically insightful and are doing the best practices. But I'm sure you also ask your family, your friends, your loved ones about their opinion too. Not because they have medical insight, but because they have your best interest in mind. So in a lot of ways, when we're working with communities, we need to build trust and ensure that the work that we're doing is good work. But also in everything that we do, we truly have to have the community's best interest in mind. And it's hard to build trust. Like, how do you build trust? It's not something that you can necessarily build overnight. But in the way that you conduct yourself, in the way that you approach the research, in the way that you truly want to make meaningful impact, and the decisions that you make reflect how you prioritize community, and that in and of itself helps to build trust. And it's like I've said before, just because I have worked with many different communities doesn't mean that I have the same level of trust with all of them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they trust me in the same way. I would like to think that they do. And I will do my best to ensure that I foster that trust. But I can't be everybody's friend. I can't be everything to everyone. So, but it's critically important that you prioritize trust. I am in the business of trust. My work that I work with, when I work with utilities, they have to trust the work that I provide. When I work with communities, they have to trust the work that I provide. And it's not just, here's the technical report. It's when I go off and do my work, they truly believe that I have their best interest in them. Another thing is the timelines are different when working with communities. This is an article. I quite like the headline. I spent the first year drinking tea. It's built over a long period of time. And just because you've worked well with the community, or you've engaged with the community, or you've met with the community on several occasions, doesn't necessarily mean that you've built the trust. So understanding that is, you could put in a lot of effort and not gain any traction with what you're trying to achieve. But again, it's not what you're trying to achieve. Like we said before, it's about the community, right? So if you're making sure that it's about the community and what the community wants, if you're not getting traction, maybe there isn't a good fit. Or maybe there's an opportunity to do things differently to better align with what the community needs. But also, engagement could look at building trust would be something different. So as an example, that's my team playing volleyball in Palatine with the youth. Sometimes it's when there's a fire and Old Crow is evacuated, allowing community members to stay in my home. Sometimes, and the whole point isn't okay, yeah, you stayed in my home, therefore you trust me. It's part of it is doing what's right. I'm not saying that you extend past your boundary of comfort. You don't have to do what other people do, but any demonstration that you have to build that trust is an opportunity to foster the relationship. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you have opportunities to demonstrate that you truly have the community's best interest in mind, that will help foster the relationship. Also, learning is a two-way street. And what I mean by that is, like I said, I don't know what I don't know. But so in a lot of ways, I'm fortunate to contribute my expertise and experience on community partnered research. But I'm also learning from the community as well, and integrating that into what I do and how I do things. It's not an extractive process where I go in, it's like, okay, where do your data come in, take it, and it's like, okay, here's the results. It's very much a two-way street, and it's an active two-way street. Like I said, it's not going off somewhere else and then coming back with the results. It's making sure the community is informed with what's being done, how it's being done, and understanding the whole process. Because you could learn a lot when working with communities, and communities can also learn a lot with your area of expertise too. I guarantee every single person in this room and online knows at least one thing that I don't know. Everybody could learn from each other. And as long as everybody understands that there's still room to grow, still room to learn, there is that open mind frame. It's a reciprocal reciprocity aspect. I do want to talk about engagement and consultation a little bit. So through UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, communities have a right for consultation on their research, consultation on projects involving the community, and engagement in the work. I do not like the terms engagement and consultation. This is the bare minimum that we can do. Think of somebody that you care about. Say your loved one, your parents, a really close friend. Would you ever use the term, I'm going to go consult with them? Would you ever use the term, oh yeah, I'm just going to go engage with them? That seems a one-off, and sometimes it comes across as, well, I sat down with them for an afternoon, therefore I checked the box on the engagement. Or even, well, I had an email thread back and forth, therefore I've consulted, I've done my due diligence. I think those terms are used because we're not even getting that right now with the research. So they're being used as a core right of communities, but to be honest, it's a bare minimum. It really is. Right now, the way that we operate is the community is our boss. When I go to Grace Nakmiak from Polituck and I'm fortunate to be working on her community's wind energy project. She is my boss. If your boss tells you to do one thing or another, you may disagree with them, you may have different conflicts, but you're going to comply because you have an obligation to meet that. Much like in the same way that I was saying before, if the community were funding your research, how would you treat it differently? If the community were responsible for your career progression, how would you be treating it differently? I wouldn't even think of it as engagement and consultation. It's if you're fortunate to be working with the community, how could you set up the structure either formally or even informally such that they are your boss? They are the ones who determine what success looks like. They are the ones who determine what you do and how you do things. It's a framework that I try and do with every community. I'm not saying that it works with every community, but all that to say is there's a lot of talk about engagement and consultation, and I don't think it meets the mark. Another thing is allow yourself to be vulnerable. There are a lot of traditional values around humor. And actually the image on the left was me yesterday at 4 p.m. in Yelp. I make a fool of myself, and I'm embarrassed about going up in front of the community and shy about cultural misappropriation. And you know, I like to think of myself as a professional, and I conduct myself in a professional manner. But if I'm invited to join a drum dance, I'll be there. If I'm not the best volleyball player, but if I'm invited to go play volleyball with you, I'll be there. If I'm invited to play hand games, I have no idea how to play hand games, but I'll be there. Because think about something that's important to you and your culture. And you invite somebody to share your culture. It's very meaningful if they participate, as opposed to, oh, no, I'm going to step back because I'm too shy. Now, I'm not saying go outside your boundary of comfort. Like everybody should stay within their comfort zone. But it's also good to try to extend the comfort zone, because it is meaningful to participate and learn some of the different languages, or learn some of the different approaches and different cultures and different ways of life. And if you can show that you don't take yourself too seriously, that helps to build trust, because then it shows it's not about you. It really isn't. I'm willing to show that I can be vulnerable. Shows that, okay, this is somebody who's willing to listen. And even before, when I was talking about asking what a successful project look like, I have no right to know that. They are not obligated to tell me. Asking communities about their vision, about their values, about their priorities is vulnerable in and of itself. If me, a stranger, say I don't know you, if I were to walk up to you and say, what do you value most? That's pretty vulnerable, because that's also, if I tell you my priorities and what I cherish, that makes me vulnerable, because you know how to hurt me. So even having the fortune of hearing what priorities the community has, what values the community has, is very important, that you should protect that as well, and make sure that you don't damage that relationship. Make sure that you prioritize that. Another thing is to be open to different worldviews. You change the way you see things, the things you see change. One of many things that I've learned is often Indigenous communities have different worldviews. They see the world in different ways. And those perspectives are very enriching. It helps you see things in different ways, and that helps you identify in terms of what a success is. It's not, I'm trained in STEM. I'm a nerd at heart. So helping me to see things differently, like it's not just about optimization of a specific technical study. It's more than just that. And understanding different worldviews and having more empathy around that could help guide your successful collaboration and partnership with communities. I'll give an example. I'm sure everybody here, no matter what political party you most identify with, everybody here knows of a liberal, a conservative, somebody Green Party, NDP. Does that mean that they are bad people because they identify with a different political party? Not necessarily. What they see as what does a good life look like is different, and that's okay. It's good that we have that diversity. It's good that we have those different perspectives, because if we were all unified in what a good life looks like, the world would be boring in a lot of ways. But if you look at that framework as, I don't like you because you're liberal, I don't like you because you're conservative, that they're not bad people. I'd like to think that people are fundamentally good. It's just they have a different worldview. They have a different perspective on what a good life is. And when working with many Indigenous communities, also have a different worldview. And I apologize if I'm simplifying worldview to the point of it not being fully representative, but just recognize that there is a different worldview. And it's okay to not understand it. It's like, what do you mean that this is a priority? What do you mean? Like, but recognize that that exists. And the best part is, if they are your boss telling you what to do, that gives the community the authority to direct the work in the worldview that they see the world in. I'll give an example of a different worldview. Has anybody done any work on climate change, either climate change adaptation mitigation, or seeing some of that, where a lot of the work that's being done is, okay, how do we stop climate change? Okay, reduce our carbon emissions. Okay, mitigation. How do we be more resilient to natural disasters? That's the approach that I take. And I've been a part of the Yukon Climate Leadership Council that looked at that. When Yukon First Nations had a youth consortium to look at climate change, through their worldview, they saw climate change as a symptom. It is not the root problem. The root problem is reconnection. Much like in the sense of, I'm coughing. I don't have a cough. I might have the flu. I might have, it's what we're doing through what their report says is, we are going about it the wrong way. We are trying to treat the symptom. The real problem is reconnection. If we had better connection to the land, we wouldn't be emitting as much carbon as we would. If we had better connection with each other, we wouldn't have as much mental health issues as we have now. So looking at things differently changes the way you see things and could help inform you on how to best approach partnership and relationship. And also making sure that the community has authority and autonomy over what is said and done helps to ensure that you're doing things the right way, because they are directing the work. Another thing I want to point to is that language matters. I'm not saying that you have to get it perfect all the time. I do things differently. But the way you express yourself and the way you say things gives in. And when we say language matters, here's a quote from Shakespeare, from Romeo and Juliet. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. What he's saying is, it doesn't matter what the names are. The rose would still smell like a rose. What I'm saying is the complete opposite of this. When we work with First Nations, they are nations. They are sovereign nations. We need to work with them with that same level of respect, with that same level of authority. So I am not the president of Yukon University. I do not work with the chief. If I have an opportunity to connect with the chief, that goes through the government, the Indigenous government. You can think of it as I do international relations. But they are sovereign nations. Respect them as sovereign nations. And if you talk about their priorities as, yeah, but they just don't know. If you talk about their priorities as, oh, well, what do they not like? What are they allergic to? And these are all things that I've heard. It sends a message of respect. It sends a message of authority. So I don't want you to be cautious about saying the wrong thing about anything. If you go in with the mind frame of, I don't know what I don't know, that helps things. Another thing is OCAP principles and extending relations. So OCAP, ownership, control, access, and possession of data. We have data on the communities that we've worked with, and many different good people from higher education institutions, like, oh, you have the data, can you share that with us? Because we can find great insights from it. But they're not our data to share. We are fortunate to have the data working with the utilities. The utility owns the data, but it's also about the community. So they need to ensure that they have ownership, control, access, and possession. So we need to make sure that the community is aware of what the data are used for, because it's about them. And even though it's just a load profile, for example, if we had a load profile of your house, I could tell you when you take vacations. I could tell you about how you use energy. I could tell a lot about your behavior. And not to say that you're trying to do malicious research, but there's a lot of insights that could be gathered about you without your consent, that if I'm difficult to work with because I have the data and I'm not sharing, that's why. If we have data and you have the utility data, that who owns the data, and communities, if you have utility and communities permission, absolutely, very, very happy to share what we have. But it's more than just, hey, you have the data, can you share it with us? Because we have to do right by our communities. And extending relations. There are a lot of people who want to do good, but I have to trust that you will do things the right way. And when I say the right way, I mean, do things the way that I would be comfortable with. And not to say that you don't, because I don't blame you for not knowing how I do things. This is the first time that I'm kind of presenting it. But if I make the introductions, I am vouching for you. And I truly have to trust that you have the right approach in order to do that. And you might not know, not because you're a bad person. I've rarely come across somebody who has ill intentions or who is extremely selfish. But it's very difficult. And even when visiting a community, it's very challenging, because if you think about a community, if I were to walk down Vancouver, I don't need to be invited to visit Vancouver. If I were to come to BCIT, yeah, I might stand out because of my attire, but people wouldn't think twice of it. If I were to walk into your home uninvited, you might notice it. Communities are their homes. So it's not, I'm going to visit the community and see. If you have an opportunity to work with the community, make sure that you're invited. Make sure that you're invited into their home. And when I say their home, I don't necessarily mean their house. I mean their community. Make sure that you're welcome there. Yeah, I just said that with community visits. So essentially what I'm asking is everybody on this call, everybody in the room, care. Like I said, everybody wants to do good, and everybody that I've met wants to do meaningful work. But when I say that I want you to care, I want you to truly care. Think about somebody that you truly care about, that you have their best interest in mind, that you prioritize them. And it's not just, say, for example, if you have a kid, it's not that I care about you, but I know what's best for you. The community has the authority and autonomy to determine to have self-determination on what is their priorities. So it's not even a parent-child relation. But you care about them in a way that you prioritize their priorities. What they prioritize comes first for you. What their values are, you are ensuring that you're aligned. And the way to have a meaningful, trusting relationship is to convey that not only you care, like, yeah, I do care. Everybody here cares. But I actually mean to go a layer further and truly, meaningfully care, which is something a deeper ask. So in summary, with 3 different takeaways, think about what problem are you trying to solve? With a lot of academic institutions, myself included, I'm a higher education, I work for UConn University. We are known for the solutions that we provide. We build our career around the solutions that we provide. But if you want to truly identify what problem you're trying to solve, it's not your problem. It's not about you. It's about the community. It's their problem. They are helping to support the solution. And that can mean a different nuance and different twists. So for example, if the community values teaching and training, well, I developed a solution. I developed a training module. Therefore, it will meet your needs. Not necessarily, because does it actually meet the community's needs? If the work that is done is successful and you don't get any credit for it, is it still good? If the community advances in a way that they see as successful and you played no part in it, is that still good? So yes, I'm a human too who has a career. I want to make sure that I advance my career too. I've made many sacrifices in order to prioritize communities. But oftentimes what I find is they reciprocate in kind. They don't want you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. That's not the kind of relationship that they want to bear. But you have to make sure that you're solving their problem through the project, which goes into whose problem are we really trying to solve. If I have funding to do X, but the community wants to do Y, it's like, sorry, and part of the challenge is through academic constraints. I have to graduate this master's, so we have this time frame. There are a lot of constraints, but identify and truly identify whose problem you're trying to solve could help guide the project. And then finally, what is the legacy of the project? Whose legacy is it? 50 years from now, hopefully all of us will be retired. Hopefully all of us will be done with the project. We'll go on our merry way. But the community will still be there, and the community will still be inheriting the results of the project. Whether they build off of it, even if the project is no longer installed, the community will still be inheriting and be building off of the legacy of the project. So if you focus on what is the legacy of the project and whose legacy it is, that could help develop the framework for developing a project collaboration with the community. So hopefully, what I wanted to try to avoid in this presentation is here are a bunch of tactics or get rich quick approaches to working with communities, because that's not the intent. What I wanted to try and do is convey some mind frames around working with communities that I've been fortunate to find success in. And like I said, I will very likely change this presentation when I work with more communities. I'll very likely change this approach, and this isn't the only way of working with communities. And I'd be very open to talking in more detail about this with anybody afterwards. Thank you.